Alright, let's talk about a touchy subject for some: gun control and school shootings. But first, let's push the NRA and politics to the side. I'll try to keep them out of this, but no promises. So, sometimes at work, to pass time, we talk about politics or things that are going on throughout the world. Now, many of my friends have all types of views, and many of them are complete opposites from one another. Now, me personally, I enjoy listening to both sides and then coming up with my own thoughts, rather than becoming your typical clueless drone. There's just so many people who tend to repeat what they hear and they don't actually do research on the subject they're talking about. So don't be that person. Anyway, these are my views. I'll start with this assault weapons ban, or I should say the ban that people want on semi automatic rifles. I'm not going to get into the details about the definition of assault weapon. As far as I'm concerned, it's still up in the air. So, I'll bring up the AR-15 because it seems to be the one that people tend to discuss the most. Why would anyone want or need an AR-15? That's what I hear a lot of. Well, me personally, I'd buy an AR-15 for home defense. Not for hunting, although I know a lot of people do use it for hunting. Now, why an AR-15 rather than a pistol or a shotgun? First off, an AR-15 looks intimidating. So if a would-be burglar saw me holding it, they're more than likely to run away. A pistol doesn't really hold that factor. A shotgun does, but it's limited in range, and an AR-15 has superior range. House break-ins these days usually involve more than one person. If I had an AR-15 with semi-automatic fire, I'd be able to take out intruders a lot faster than with a pistol. With an extended clip, I'd be able to hold them off even longer in case things get bad, as in they're also armed. With a shotgun, I'd have to be fairly close to do some damage. I'll also have extra range and be able to aim a lot better with an AR-15. Most people buy guns for protection, and it seems a lot of people tend to forget about that. AR-15s and other semi-automatics do have purposes other than hunting. Now, I'll tell you about something that happened to a friend of mine. My friend Oscar was awoken one night from his dog barking. Naturally, he grabbed his gun. It happened to be a pistol. His brother and his father were also woken up by the dog's barking. Oscar went searching for a prowler, and to make a long story short, the intruder got inside the house and he ended up holding a knife up against his brother's throat. If Oscar had an AR-15, that alone might have scared that guy away, or at least it would have given Oscar better aim at the intruder while he was holding a knife against his brother's throat. But he was stuck with a pistol. He gave a warning shot which scared the guy, and his brother was able to get away. Then the intruder ran towards Oscar, so Oscar shot him. But the guy kept running towards him, and he ended up shooting him a couple more times. Eventually the guy went down, and then, the police came. The intruder ended up dying while being taken to the hospital. Now, this is where the amount of guns a person can have argument comes in. Oscar's gun was taken away for several years while he waited for the trials to end. Now, it's not what you might think. Oscar was in the right. The trials were for the 4 other subjects that were outside waiting to get into his house. During that time lapse, Oscar had to go out and buy several other guns. One for his house, which stayed there. One for his car, which stayed in there. And one for his person. So as you can see, there are times when people need more than one gun for protection. Another argument I heard was people don't need guns and should wait for police. Now, I can go over several things as to why this would not work, such as time constraints, but I want to take this a bit further. During major weather events such as tornadoes, floods, earthquakes, and hurricanes, emergency personnel might not be able to get to you, or you might not be able to contact them. During such events, bad people can literally get away with murder. If you're armed with a gun, that at least gives you a fighting chance against such people. An AR-15 sure looks a lot more useful now, huh? Imagine trying to protect your family from a gang of people that are trying to loot your house or worse, rape your family. You truly don't know anyone's intent when it comes down to it. I don't even have to give you any examples of the chaos that ensues afterwards because there's been so many examples that have happened over the years on the news. Now, let's take this a step further. What if all guns were banned? What would bad guys use? Well, naturally, illegal guns. Where would they get them from? Well, across the borders, smuggled from ships, etc. There will always be a way to get a hold of them. Also, they could use knives, explosives, vehicles, right? Could a knife actually do much? Well, imagine you're in school and the bell rings. The hallway is filled with students. You need only run through that crowd holding one or two knives out. That could be as deadly as a gun. Explosives or bombs might seem a bit far-fetched, but they're pretty easy to make and there's tons of information out there that can teach you how to make them. Now, vehicles might not seem like they could do a whole lot to a school, but there are many types out there. It's fairly easy to steal a bulldozer or a large dump truck and run it through a school. This brings me to the whole making schools safer. Naturally, giving teachers guns won't be an end-all, but it could help along with other safeguards. Let's say you're barricaded in a classroom with an active shooter, and the shooter is right outside your door. You're stuck in that room with your fellow students and teachers. You have nothing to stop the shooter. Your only hope is to use a desk as a shield, or maybe toss a few items at the shooter. Now let's do the same scenario, only your teacher has a gun. Your teacher is in there with you like they've been trained to do, not outside trying to stop the shooter. Now, there's a possibility the shooter hits your teacher before they can react, but that wouldn't be the end of it. There would still be a chance for you or another student to grab that gun and take out the shooter. The point is, it gives you a fighting chance rather than leave you there to be slaughtered. Making schools safer should be a priority, not gun control. Mainly because no matter what, a bad guy will find a way to do bad. Clear book bags and metal detectors in all schools would be a start. Reinforced doors and glass would be something to work towards as well. It might take time to fortify every school, but in the end, it would make them safer. I'm going to sidetrack a bit just to show another side to think about. Now, we already have enough laws in the books. We just need people to actually reinforce them. With that said, let's say a parent has taught their child how to use a gun and they went through all the safety precautions. I'd hope that parent would keep in mind that although they might trust their child, there could be things going on to their child outside of their perspective, such as them getting bullied at school. I don't care what anyone says. You will never truly know your child. Outside influence is always going to be there. Don't give your child access to your guns. If you leave them home alone, then I could understand you allowing them to have access that time. But from there, I would definitely suggest having all your guns secured. Mental health is such a huge problem that could and should be addressed. Now, you can't stop all the crazy people out there, but we can attempt to help as many of them as we can before they go crazy and turn bad. Now, keep in mind that not all mass shooters or bad guys have mental health problems. Some do it to be glorified. They're out there attempting to make a name for themselves. We live in a time where it's easy for anyone to go out, kill some people, and make a name for themselves. So it's best to find ways to defend against such people. I'll close this out with a few things. When something happens like a mass shooting, people tend to let anger take over and they want something or someone to blame. They go off anger and fear and they close their minds off to people who are trying to be rational to them. I believe it's one of the reasons that so many people have made these school shootings political. Now, if there is a way to improve background checks for gun purchases, then I'm all for it. But banning certain guns, it's not going to prevent future shootings. Don't take my word for it. And don't be a drone. Go out yourself and do research. Educate yourself.